Hello everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. This tells YouTube you want more stories like this one. They never placed a headstone. No name, no date, just a shallow dip in the soil near the tree line where moss consumes stone and the silence feels heavier than the morning fog. People around here still claim you can hear scratching under the dirt at night. But that's just a story, until you dig deeper. Until you discover the town council paid to have the record sealed, that the midwife disappeared that very same week, and that a single page, torn from the family Bible, was discovered buried in a jar next to a tiny coffin. For words were inked in a shaky hand, * born wrong, buried right *. The town never welcomed the Holloway family, but they tolerated them. Just barely. For generations, they lived tucked away in a crumbling house off County Road 12, surrounded by dense woods and old, rusted wire. No one could recall seeing them in church, or at school, or buying supplies. But everyone knew the stories, the whispers of babies born with no eyes, of children who never learned to speak, of cousins marrying cousins, and of a man called Uncle Eli, who hadn't been seen in the daylight since 1937. In 1961, the county finally tried to step in. An anonymous tip arrived at the sheriff's office. It alleged the Holloways had buried a child alive behind their barn. It also claimed this child was not their first. Whatever the deputies found, or failed to find, was enough to close the case within a week. No body was dug up, no charges were filed, no further questions were asked. But a box surfaced in 1998, discovered in the attic of an abandoned courthouse, tied with twine and labeled only * Holloway evidence *. Inside were hand-drawn charts of the family tree, a faded picture of an infant with its mouth sewn shut, and a sample of soil that tested positive for human blood, type AB negative, a match for only one person in the entire county, the last living Holloway. And she hasn't spoken a single word in over 60 years. The Holloway family tree doesn't branch out. It coils, looping back on itself in patterns that even expert genealogists found impossible to map. A psychiatric evaluation from 1972, done under court order for the surviving daughter, described her as cognitively distant, dissociative, and carrying a trauma too dense to unravel. She was 7 years old then. Her hands were covered in scars. The only thing she ever drew were pictures of coffins. But let's go back further. The Holloways first appear in Kentucky land records in 1811, when a man named Silas Holloway bought 82 acres of wooded land using Confederate coin, 30 years before the Confederacy even existed. Historians now suspect the name Holloway was an alias, chosen for its isolation. Even back then, people noticed how few visitors who entered Holloway land ever came back with a story to tell. Most said the family never left the property, not even for supplies. They raised their own animals, grew their own food, and buried their own dead. One of the earliest outside accounts comes from a traveling priest's journal in 1849. He wrote, "I was refused entry 3 times, each time by the same pale-faced boy, though he gave a different name each time. The 3rd time, he said he was the father. No priest ever went back." Over the years, patterns started to show. Local doctors quietly refused to treat Holloway women, citing strange birth defects and what they called a moral hesitation. School teachers remembered children who enrolled without birth certificates and were gone before the first snow. One boy, Ezekiel, came to school for 2 weeks and never spoke a word, he just stared at the chalkboard and drooled. When the principal tried to visit his home, he came back white as a ghost and quit that very night. He was later found hanging in his attic by a belt, a child's dress nailed to the wall behind him. By 1958, the family was down to 7 members, all living in a 3-room house with windows boarded up and a stench so bad the neighbors filed official complaints. The youngest girl, Mary Eliza, was seen just once by a census taker, who reported she was covered in bruises, walked with a limp, and refused to blink. Mary Eliza vanished within the year. And that's when the rumors started, that she had been buried alive in the yard as a punishment, or a sacrifice, or a warning to the others. Officially, her disappearance remains unsolved. But ask anyone who grew up near the Holloway land, and they'll tell you exactly what happened. Some say she was punished for talking to a boy from town. Others claim she was born with a deformity the family saw as a sign of possession. But the story that persists, the one whispered by those who still live near the ruins, is that Mary Eliza started to remember things she shouldn't have. And in a family like the Holloways, memory was a death sentence. What we know for sure is this. A neighbor, Clara Rowe, filed 3 complaints in the spring of 1959. Each one described muffled screams at night, the sound of a shovel hitting dirt, and a child's voice singing from under the ground. Nothing was done. The sheriff, who was a distant cousin of the Holloways, dismissed it as female nerves and hallucinations. But Clara kept a journal. One entry from June 3 reads, "I saw the girl, pale and dirty, staring from the cornfield. Her mouth was moving but no sound came out. The next night, the field was on fire. Then, nothing. Just silence." Clara was found dead 2 weeks later. Heart failure at 43. In 1975, a construction crew clearing part of the O'Leary land found something the family had never reported, a small, brick-lined pit behind the barn. Inside were child-sized shackles, bones later confirmed to be from at least 2 juveniles, and a rusted metal plate engraved with a date, May 17, 1959, the day Mary Eliza was last seen. The pit was filled in quickly. No investigation was started, and for years, no one spoke of it. Then came the audio tape, discovered in 1998 with the courthouse evidence box. The reel-to-reel recording is only 3 minutes long, but the sounds on it are unforgettable. A child's voice singing off-key. A woman whispering in what sounds like tongues. And finally, 32 seconds of a rhythmic pounding, like fists on a wooden lid. Then silence. Forensic experts confirmed the tape was authentic and unedited. The soil from the pit matched the child's blood type, and yet the authorities called it insufficient evidence. Some truths are meant to rot in the ground, never seeing the light. The Holloways were more than a family. They were a closed system, a bloodline with no way out. And like any system left to decay in isolation, something unnatural began to grow inside. Something that didn't care about right or wrong, only survival. When anthropologists looked at the Holloway records in the early 2000s, they found disturbing patterns. 7 confirmed generations. Births all happening within the same household. The same names, Silas, Eli, Mary, Ruth, repeating like broken prayers. And most chilling of all, nearly every Holloway birth after 1890 was the result of unions within the immediate family. Not cousins, but brothers, fathers, uncles. One expert, Dr. Nathaniel Greaves, called the case a genetic feedback loop so severe it had practically weaponized itself. He added that the mutations noted in medical records, webbed fingers, missing ears, fused jaws, were classic signs of recessive traits doubling up over time. In simple terms, the Holloways only bred with Holloways, and the children paid the price. But this wasn't ignorance. It was ritual. Inside a handwritten family gospel, found in a waterproof tin by the creek, was a passage that read, "Purity comes from within, from our own, not the stranger, not the poison blood." This gospel, written in a mix of Bible verse and backward slang, mentioned a punishment called the waking burial *, reserved for children who looked too far outside, or who were born unclean. It was described as a cleansing of the bloodline through silence and soil. It doesn't take much to understand what that means. But the most grotesque entry might be one from 1946, signed simply *Mother Star. It reads, "Today we laid down our Ruth. She fought the sleep, bit her tongue clean through, but we sang and she stopped. Now she is still. She will not wander like the others." There is no official record of a Ruth Holloway being born in that decade. Over time, the family began to vanish, quietly, with no funerals or obituaries. No one knows for sure how the last Holloways died, or if any got away. By 1982, the property was declared abandoned. The house rotted until 1993, when a fire, cause unknown, burned it to ash. All that's left now is the foundation, the barn's charred beams, and a single, nameless wooden cross. If you're still watching, you're braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? The last confirmed Holloway died in 2006. Her name was Mary Eliza Holloway, and she had lived in a state psychiatric facility for almost 40 years. Her official diagnosis was complex trauma, nonverbal psychosis, and cultural delusions. She never spoke a word while she was there, but she drew constantly. Over 700 drawings were found after her death. Every one was made with a single red crayon, and nearly every one showed the same things: a child standing in a hole, adults watching from above, and a symbol carved into the sky, 3 circles in a triangle, always with a 4th, smaller circle crossed out. No one knew what it meant. But in 2009, a local historian found a wood-carved post from the Holloway property with the same symbol etched over what looked like a sealed well. The well has since been filled with concrete. Sarah's autopsy revealed something that still troubles experts. She was born with a double uterus, a rare condition often linked to genetic mutation. But more chillingly, her tongue had been surgically split and sewn back together, twice. The medical staff confirmed this was not done under their care. It happened before she was institutionalized, sometime between the ages of 5 and 10. What kind of family performs surgery on a child's tongue, and then falls silent forever? Sarah's final drawing, made just days before she died, showed a group of figures kneeling around a box in the ground. A single line of text was scrawled beneath it: "She hears us still star." The authorities called it nonsense, but in 2011, amateur ghost hunters trespassed on the old O'Leary land. What they recorded is still debated. The footage, grainy and hard to verify, shows a deep sinkhole surrounded by bones, mostly animal, but not all. A faint melody can be heard, though none of the crew remember hearing it at the time. When the video was analyzed, audio experts found a child's voice buried in the static, singing off-key and repeating one phrase: "I'm not asleep." It's easy to dismiss stories like this as folklore, small-town legends twisted by fear and time. But every legend starts with a truth. And the deeper you dig into the O'Leary family's past, the more truth you find buried just beneath the surface. In 1979, a university geneticist named Dr. Harold Renea quietly did an unsanctioned study on inbreeding in rural Appalachian communities. His notes were never published, but decades later, a scanned copy was leaked online. In them, Dr. Renea points to an unnamed family that matches the Holloway's profile exactly: 7 generations, isolated property, repeating names, and multiple children in unmarked graves. He notes severe genetic collapse and the deliberate hiding of birth defects. The most damning entry reads: "The youngest female subject exhibited symptoms of prenatal trauma. No medical attention was ever sought. Locals suggest she was given back to the ground star. Given back, like an offering." More research suggests the Holloways might have followed an offshoot religious cult, one that rejected outside blood, medicine, and government. This sect, mentioned briefly in old court archives as the fold of the first blood *, believed purity came only from union within, that bringing in outside blood was to invite decay. Their scripture, found in fragments and spoken stories, often speaks of the cleansing sleep the child in the earth and the watchers beneath the corn star. No known members of this sect exist today, at least not openly. And yet, the stories continue. In 2015, a hiker reported finding what he thought was a child's grave in a forest clearing. The grave was fresh. Too fresh. He said it was only about 2 feet deep, with small wooden crosses placed around it. No markings, no names. He came back with the authorities, but by then the site was gone, covered with pine needles, with no sign it had ever been disturbed. The hiker was later found wandering a field nearby, barefoot, muttering the same phrase again and again. They buried her awake. We checked the GPS coordinates he gave. They lead to the far edge of the O'Leary property, just past the ruins of the barn where Mary Eliza was last seen. There's a reason towns like this stay quiet. Not out of fear, at least not a fear you can name, but out of memory. Out of the knowledge that some truths, once you dig them up, don't go back into the earth so easily. The O'Leary family is gone. Their house is rubble. Their names are erased from records, gravestones, and even local papers. But what they did, and what they believed, is not gone. It lingers. Not just in the stories or the strange symbols carved into trees by the creek. Not just in the police reports that don't exist anymore or the court files lost in a flood. It lingers in the land itself, in the way animals won't cross it, in how the wind seems to die the moment you step over the old fence line. In the silence. Locals still won't say the name Holloway out loud. Some claim the soil is cursed. Others say it's still hungry. That the children buried alive were never meant to die, not completely. That they were sealed away in a state between sleep and silence, what the family called the stillness *, and that sometimes on certain nights, when the fog is thick and the moon is low, you can hear them stirring under the earth. Scratching. Not screaming. Just scratching. And maybe that's the worst part. What was done wasn't an accident. It wasn't madness or desperation. It was tradition. A family preserving its purity at any cost. A bloodline folding in on itself like a dark flower, hiding its rot from the world until it was too late. In the end, we don't know how many children were buried. We don't know how many survived, or if any made it out of those woods. But we do know this. One child was buried alive, and nobody stopped it. She wasn't lost. She was chosen. And perhaps, under the moss and the ash and the silence, she still remembers who did it. And she waits. Thank you for watching. If this story disturbed you, share it with someone you know. Let us know in the comments, what do you think really happened on Holloway land? Don't forget to like and subscribe, because there are more stories like this, buried in the past, waiting to be unearthed.